Debate on the 20th Amendment concludes. Vote to be taken after the committee stage. Dual citizens to be allowed to contest for public office under the 20th Amendment. Vimal, Gammanpilla and Vasudeva to support the 20th Amendment based on the President's promise to reintroduce bar on dual citizens in the new constitution. Quarantine curfew imposed in the Kotahena Police Division. MP Rishad attends parliamentary sessions in personal protective equipment.
Hello there, very good evening to you. You're watching Prime Time News on News First. Today is once again an interesting day with regard to the 20th Amendment to the Constitution. So our news bulletin will be an extended one. We urge you to stay with us as we keep you updated about what's happening in Parliament and around the country as well. The second reading on the 20th Amendment to the Constitution was passed with a majority in Parliament this evening. 156 MPs voted in favour, while 65 voted against the 20th Amendment. This was for the second reading of the 20th Amendment, and now the committee stage is currently underway. Let's have a look at what happened in Parliament.
කොළ පාටින් සඳහන් වෙන්නේ පක්ෂව ඡන්දය පාවිච්චි කිරීම, රතු පාටින් සඳහන් වෙන්නේ විරුද්ධව ඡන්දය පාවිච්චි කිරීම, කහ පාටින් දන්වන්නේ ඡන්දය දීමෙන් වැළකී සිටීම හෝ අපක්ෂපාත ඡන්දය පාවිච්චි කරන්නේ නැහැ කියන එකයි.
Now, several MPs who were from the opposition voted for the second reading of the 20th Amendment to the Constitution. There were 8 opposition MPs who voted in favour. They were SJB Nationalist MP Diana Gamage, Sri Lanka Muslim Congress MP Nasir Ahmed, Muslim National Alliance MP AASM Rahim, Sri Lanka Muslim Congress MP Faisal Qasim, Sri Lanka Muslim Congress MP HMM Haris, Sri Lanka Muslim Congress MP MS Tawfiq, SGB MP and TPA MP Arvind Kumar, SJB and ACMC MP Ishaq Rahman. These were the people who from the opposition voted in favour of the second reading of the 20th Amendment to the Constitution. Now, as you are aware, the committee stage is currently underway, where the amendments are being discussed. On your screen are results that were displayed in the parliamentary chambers when the voting was done in an electronic manner, and thereafter the committee stage is currently underway. And an interesting factor was about the dual citizenship matter, and the opposition requested for a vote to be held for that particular clause itself, the dual citizenship, at the working or rather the committee stage, and thereafter the vote was taken. However, there was another vote, and the vote received 157 votes in favour of the dual citizenship clause, while only 64 votes were cast against the dual citizenship vote. So that's one less vote for the opposition than what was received in the second reading, and one more vote for the ruling faction in that regard. That is what happened in the Parliament now and just before around 7. Now, as we promised earlier, we will keep you updated as to what is going on. The final vote is expected around 10 and 10:30. So stay tuned to News First as we keep you updated on the final decision on the 20th Amendment to the Constitution. That is what is happening now. What happened in the morning? Opposition leader Sadith Premadasa began the second day of the debates following the second reading of the 20th Amendment to the Constitution.
We remember that an agreement was signed before the Temple of the Sacred Tooth Relic to completely abolish the executive presidential system. They went on a parade and led this movement, but now they have forgotten. This 20th Amendment is being passed for personal needs. It is inappropriate for amendments to make the President a puppet or the Prime Minister an office assistant. That is the stance of the Samagi Jana Balawegaya. What is happening here? The constitution is being bulldozed. They are using the majority power they have and are arbitrarily adding these provisions without giving any regard to the views of others. I don't believe that this is suitable for the country. If this is being done for the betterment of the country, it should be done. We believe that the constitution should have provisions for the establishment of the National Security Council. Those who have been found guilty of engaging in terrorism must be sentenced to death. The death sentence must be handed down to those who are found guilty of smuggling drugs. These are some things that should be given top priority in the country. Is it fair to promise to bring a proper constitution in a year and until then bring a flawed 20th Amendment?
ඒට ඉස්සල්ලා වැරදි 20ක් ගේන එක සාධාරණද?
ඔබතුමා කිව්වා මරණීය දණ්ඩනය ගේන්න කියලා. ඒ ඔබතුමාගේ පෞද්ගලික අදහසද ඔබතුමාගේ පක්ෂයේ අදහසද ලංකා පක්ෂයේ අදහස මරණීය දණ්ඩනය ගේන්න ඕන කියන එක.
පෞද්ගලික අදහස් නෑනේ අපේ. ඔබතුමාලගේ පාර්ශ්වය තමයි පෞද්ගලික අදහස්.
මරණීය දණ්ඩනය ගේන්න කමන්නේ.
පක්ෂ අදහස්.
ඔබතුමාලගේ පක්ෂයේ සියලුම දෙනා ශ්‍රේෂ්ඨාධිකරණයට ගිහිල්ලා තියෙනවා මරණීය දණ්ඩනය ගේන්න එපා කියලා. ඒක අපි සඳහන් කරලා තියාගන්න. හොඳයි හොඳයි පක්ෂය හරි.
මම දන්නේ ගරු අධිකරණ ඇමතිතුමා.
I do not know if the Justice Minister of the country is against handing down the death penalty to those found guilty of terrorism. Is the Minister of Justice against that? Honorable Speaker, is the Minister of Justice against this?
ඔබතුමා විරුද්ධද? ගරු
ඔබතුමාගෙන් අහන්නේ මේ ඔබතුමාගේ මතයද පක්ෂ මතයද?
අර කතානායකතුමනි මේක අහගන්න පොඩ්ඩක්. පොඩ්ඩක් අහගන්න. අහගන්න. ගරු කතානායකතුමනි මේ 20 වන සංශෝධනයෙන් මොකද්ද සිදුවන්නේ?
Listen to me for a minute. What does the 20th Amendment do? It creates a constitutional king. What is the result if the power of the executive, the legislature and the judiciary is consolidated in one person? It will be an autocracy. We request you to listen to the people. Listen to Alle Gunavansathero. Listen to Muruttetwe Anandathero. Don't forget where you started. You can fool some people all the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time.
රැවටිය හැකියි. නමුත් සියලු දෙනා සියලු කල්හි රැවටීම කළ නොහැකි. මෙන්න මේක හොඳට ඔළුවට ගන්න.
Checks and balances තියෙන්න ඕනේ. There must be checks and balances. There is a balance in everything in this world. What happens when there are checks and balances beyond the required limit? What will be the result? You won't be able to do anything. The person who is in office cannot make any decisions. He cannot implement any programs. The 19th Amendment to the Constitution gave the people the right to file a fundamental rights petition against the actions of the President. We are going to preserve these provisions in the 20th Amendment. There is no change in that. The President needs certain powers to function. For example, the power to dissolve Parliament when the Parliament becomes dysfunctional. It is essential for the President to have this power if a government cannot be formed in Parliament. Other executive presidents also have this power. That is why we proposed that if there is any serious need for Parliament to be dissolved before the term of 5 years lapse, then the President must have the power to do it. On the issue surrounding the dual citizens are citizens of Sri Lanka as well. The Constitution of Sri Lanka clearly states that all citizens are entitled to the same rights. The
19th Amendment to the Constitution was tested under two of the most unsuccessful leaders in our country. They ruled at a time where dishonesty, deception was at its peak. It is not fair to attribute the failure of these leaders to the 19th Amendment. Also, J.R. Jayawardena had a massive majority in Parliament, but he still could not implement his destructive policies. The power of the Parliament, the Cabinet of Ministers and the judiciary was transferred to the hands of one individual. It was a dispute here that created the executive. What has happened now? You have a two-thirds majority in Parliament and you have the presidency. You also have the power in a majority of the provincial councils. The government's power is being consolidated among a few members of the same family. But even that is not enough. What more do you want? The power has not been consolidated in one person. They are trying to take the next step after J.R. Jayawardena and consolidate the power in one person. Please tell us as to if the passage of the 20th Amendment would help dispose the MCC agreement. Would it help in reclaiming the Hambantota port from the Chinese company? Would it support in securing the East Container Terminal and prevent its sale? This is not bought because of those reasons. This power is going to be used to sign the MCC agreement. It will be used to sell the East Container Terminal. Close to 100 hectares of land has been identified at 5 locations in Colombo. This includes the supermarket premises in Boralla, a plot of land that will save us from floods in Paliagoda and Kalania. We are getting 64 acres under the Port City Agreement. They are asking for these powers to hand over these 100 hectares of land to a Chinese company. They tried to do this for a long time. Ranil Wickremesinghe tried to take the next step of JR's constitution in 2001, again in 2015, and in 2020 they couldn't implement the second phase of JR's plan. Ranil Wickremesinghe was weak and he couldn't do it. Chandrika tried to get over this hurdle but she couldn't. Mahinda Rajapaksa posed some objection while he was a minister in the government. The provision to allow dual citizens to contest for public office has caused much debate in the country. On that matter, I believe that if this cannot be removed, this must be at least be amended to say that dual citizens cannot contest for the presidency and for local government bodies, as those provisions do not affect Basil Rajapaksa.
The 19th Amendment was brought and commissions were established. After the 8th of January 2015, Honorable Speaker, for the first time in history, people wearing suits came here and robbed the central bank under the patronage of the head of the state. It is not us, but the people here who are saying this. During the past election, we heard it from their mouths itself that it was Ranil Wickremesinghe who masterminded the bond scam.
හරි දැන් ඊට පස්සේ හරි නේද පොන්සේකා මන්ත්‍රීතුමනි හරියට හරි ඔය තියන්නේ ඔය එන්නේ දෙයියනේ ඔය එන්නේ දැන් හොරකම සිද්ධ වෙනවා මහා බැංකුව මංකොල්ල කනවා අන්න ඒකෙන් පස්සේ.
After the bond scam, in May, the 19th Amendment to the Constitution was passed. This had many provisions on audits and curbing corruption. This would have enabled the government to nab thieves. Show me one thief that was nabbed. We would like to ask, what are the results of these provisions to curb corruption? Who are the thieves that were nabbed?
ඊළඟ කතිකයන්ගෙන් මම කියනවා පැහැදිලිව අපිට ඔප්පු කරලා පෙන්නන්න කියලා. But I'm asking the members in the opposition ranks. There are many rumored to be crossing over and voting. Why do you want to do that? You don't have a mandate from the people who voted for you to do that. What are you doing that for? What's the consideration on which you are contemplating this act of betrayal of the people who voted for you? Don't do this.
That the importance of the media in playing its role as a watchdog will be to some extent curtailed with the adoption of the 20th Amendment rather than the 19th Amendment. And the reason for that is because the 20th Amendment removes the democratic features and structures that are attendant in the 19th Amendment to the Constitution, with particular reference.
Some interesting views there in Parliament. That was, of course, during the debate that was held today with regard to the 20th Amendment to the Constitution. And what you see on your screen is the current parliamentary sessions, live parliamentary sessions. The final vote is to be held shortly, and we are geared to bring that result to you as well. After all the views were expressed in Parliament with regard to the 20th Amendment, the concluding remarks were made by President's Counsel, Justice Minister Ali Sabri. Let's have a listen to what he had to say this evening.
It is very clear if you read the entire constitution that the President is responsible to Parliament. The country should be run according to the laws, and the laws are being made by the legislature, and the President can be removed by the Parliament by way of an impeachment. I must state one thing. The people who are speaking highly about these matters during the time of the previous government, they brought an amendment to the constitution and tried to postpone the provincial council elections. We went to the Supreme Court against it. The Supreme Court ruled against them. Now they are coming and speaking against the provision to pass urgent bills. Although they speak of this urgent bills provision, all of them were the same people who voted in favor of that. They did that in complete contravention of the procedures. The dual citizenship provision has given rise to a massive debate. Why was this bar on dual citizens brought? It was brought not for any other reason but to prevent the current president from running for office and for Basil Rajapaksa not to be able to contest for the election. Before reading the Constitution of India or America, first read the Constitution of Sri Lanka. There is no separate group of citizens called dual citizens. There are only citizens. All of those citizens are entitled to the same rights and privileges.
Minister Vimal Weerawansa, Udaya Gamampila, Professor Tissa Vitarana, Vasudeva Nayakara and Veerasumana Veerasinghe convened a special media briefing today to express their stance regarding the 20th Amendment to the Constitution. Initially, their stance was the clause in the 20th Amendment that enables dual citizens to enter Parliament should not be approved. Their decision in this regard following a meeting with the President was revealed during the media briefing.
The President told us that there was no debate on the dual citizenship clause in the country. This clause was brought to bar him from contesting the presidential election. So the President has an emotional issue with this clause. So please allow me to remove this article. I agree with your factual arguments as well. So we will include this clause in the new constitution. So since we have been given everything that we asked for besides one demand, we decided to agree to the President's request. Accordingly, we decided to support the 20th Amendment to the Constitution.
The
Minister of Justice in his response in Parliament today confirms this. We were asked to support the 20A believing in this statement. Relying on the statement of the President and believing that he will keep to his word, all of us agreed to continue to hold a stance against allowing dual citizens to contest the elections, but not to abstain from voting for the clause at the committee stage, so as not to create a division within the government. There was no such opposition. I am not sure whether it's a conspiracy. However, he has presented certain proposals to members of our faction to create a division amongst us. All members from the ruling party complained to me about this, and I in turn informed the Prime Minister about this. Jayanta Katagoda was also present at the time. When the Prime Minister questioned who was responsible for this, I pointed fingers at Jayanta Katagoda. This was when we had a disagreement.
නෑ ඔය දකුණේ කතාවක් තියෙන මට මතක නැහැ හුංගා කියලා කියන්නේ හුංගා කියලා කියනවනේ ප්‍රොක්සි කියලා කියන්නේ ඒතුමා හුංගෙක් ඒක සොයාගෙන ඉන්නවා මාධ්‍යවේදීන්ට බාර අහන්න ඕනේ එතුමාගේ නේද හුංගගෙන් අහන්න ඕන කාගේ හුංගෙක්ද කියලා නව ව්‍යවස්ථාවක මේ කරුණ අතුලත් වුණාට පස්සේ ඒකට වන විට විරුද්ධ ප්‍රදර්ශන සමාජ පාර්ලිමේන්තුවල එකකට ඉන්න පුළුවන්
I believe that any dual citizen who has dignity would not attempt to enter Parliament during this small window.
The Central Working Committee of the Pivithuruhelarume, based on 4 points, objects to dual citizens being appointed to hold public office or even any position in the administrative sector of Sri Lanka. The first is when a person who has sworn allegiance to a foreign sovereign deal with that foreign entity while holding office as a president, a minister of our country, there is a conflict of interest. The people of the country also doubt the honesty of such an individual.
භාවයේ පිළිබඳ ප්‍රශ්නයක් සංකාවක් රටේ ජනතාවට මතුවේ කියන කාරණේ පළවෙනිම කාරණේ.
දැන් මේකට කියන්නේ ගරු මන්ත්‍රීතුමිය සිංහනාද බලු කෙඳිරි. දැන් මේ බලු කෙඳිරියක් තමයි තියෙන්නේ. අද දවල් වෙනකන් සිංහනාද නගලා දැන් බලු කෙඳිරියක් මේ. ඔය දැන් කතා කරපු ගරු මන්ත්‍රීතුමිය.
During the reign of the MP who just spoke, the governor of the central bank was allowed to flee to Singapore because he had citizenship in Singapore. Even in countries where a majority of their citizens are immigrants, dual citizens are not allowed to hold office as a parliamentarian. It is based on these policy issues that we opposed these provisions. We met the president and spoke with him yesterday. He made a very emotive statement and said this article was included in the constitution to bar him, the person who saved the country as the Secretary of Defense and who built the country as the Secretary of the Urban Development Authority, from contesting for the presidential election. He said that legal action was filed against him and that he conducted his election campaign while in doubt. He also said that even after his victory at the presidential election, the opposition spoke out and said that they will challenge his appointment before the Supreme Court. So he asked us to allow him to remove this article, but he promised to include the provision to bar dual citizens from contesting the election in the new constitution that is currently being drafted, and it will be presented to Parliament before next November. Based on that assurance of the President, we have decided to support the 20th Amendment as a whole.
මේ සාතිකයේ මත අපි 20 වන සංශෝධනයේ සමස්තයටම සහාය ලබා දීමට තීන්දුවක් ගත්තා.
ඒ ද්විත්ව රටවැසි කතාවත් එකට ඇතුළත්
This bar on dual citizens contesting the election was introduced for personal reasons and not because anyone thought of the detrimental effects it would have on the country. We did not bring in the opposition against dual citizens holding public office for personal reasons. We believe that this bar on dual citizens should be expanded to even administrative appointments. The new constitution will be tabled in Parliament, and in that the bar on dual citizens will be included in it for certain.
බබට පරිවර්තනය කළ යුතුයි. නවාණ්ඩු ක්‍රම ව්‍යවස්ථාව මේ සභාවට ගේනවා. ඒකේ ද්විත්ව රටවැසි බාධකය අනිවාර්යෙන් ඇතුළත් කරනවා. මෙන්න මේ ඇමරිකානු කොඩියට යටත් ඒ දියුරුමට යටත් පිරිසක් මේ සභාවට එන එක වෙනුවෙන් තමයි පෙනී සිටින්නේ.
This group is in favor of the people who have sworn allegiance to the United States to enter these chambers.
කැමරාව ලබා දෙන්න ගරු.
ඇයි මේ මාව පෙන්නන්න නැත්තේ? හරිසා පැහැදිලිවම ගරු මූලාශ්‍රයේ මන්ත්‍රීමේනි මේ
This constitution is being amended to bring in people who have sworn allegiance to this flag. Those who spoke out against imperialists are now acting like cats. They are working to remove the bar on dual citizens.
අද පූස් පැටව වගේ දිත්ව පුරවැසි භාවය ගේන්න කටයුතු කරමින් ඉන්නවා. අර පහුගිය ටිකේම අසූචි ගඳයි කියලා කිව්වා. හැබැයි අනේ ජනාධිපතිතුමා ගෙන්නලා කතා කරාට පස්සේ අනේ මේක පොඩ්ඩක් කාලා බලපන්කො මේක රහයි කිව්වම දැන් අසූචි ටික කාලා ඒ ගඳයි කියපු අසූචි ටික කාලා අනේ දැන් ටික කාලයකට ඒ අසූචි ටික කන්න තීන්දුව කරලා තියෙනවා. මන්ත්‍රීතුමා දැන් මේ
The MP recited the pledge to the American flag in this chamber, the Parliament of Sri Lanka. They kept on playing the tunes of the US during the time of Yahapalane government.
දැන් මේ දිවුරුම දෙන්නේ එතුමයි දිවුරුම දෙන්නේ. මේ පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ දිවුරුම් දෙන්න පුළුවන්ද? ඇමරිකාවට ආවඩලා. පහුගිය කාලේ ඇමරිකානු විරෝධය
Where is the opposition to the Americans? Where is Gammanpila? Where is the opposition of MP Vasudeva? We have no issue with Basil Rajapaksa coming into these chambers, but he must denounce his allegiance to the United States. The president did that. Not only dual citizens, but even the Chinese will also get citizenship and enter this chamber.
මෙන්න මේම වෙනුව තිරුත් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. මෙන්න මේම වෙනුව තිරුත් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. එක එක වගේ වෙන වෙන පෙනුම් තිරුම් වෙන්න පුළුවන්.
The Chinese can come into this chamber, US citizens can come into this chamber because this dual citizenship provision allows for that to happen.
අපේ රටේ සිංහල මුස්ලිම් ද්‍රවිඩ කවුරුවවත් අපි එක වගේ. අපේ කරු මේ පාර්ලිමේන්තුව මේ තත්ත්වයට පාච්චල් කරන්න ලෑස්ති වෙන්න එපා. මේ තත්ත්වයට පත් කරන්න එපා මේ පාර්ලිමේන්තුව. මේක මාස්ක් එකක් මම මේ පාවිච්චි කරුවේ. මේක මාස්ක් එකක් විශේෂ මාස්ක් එකක්.
ඇමරිකාවේ එක කකුලක් ලංකාවේ තව කකුලක් තියාගෙන මේ රටේ තීන්දුව తీරන ගන්න තියෙන අවස්ථාව අපි
We should not permit individuals with dual citizenship to take decisions on behalf of the country. We stress that no one should support the lifting of the barrier on the dual citizenship. If the president and the ruling party are taking unwise decisions and trying to pave the way for a dictatorship rule, we as bhikkhus will fight against it. We supported to form this government, and we will also be the ones to send them home.
ගෙදර යවන්නෙත් අපි කියන එක ආණ්ඩුවට මතක් කරන්නට ඕන. බැසිල් රාජපක්ෂව
The current leaders are prepared to change the constitution of this country for the sake of Basil Rajapaksa. This goes against the mandate of 6.9 million people. One brother will be the president, the other is the prime minister, and the entire family tree will form the cabinet. You don't need extra powers to run this country. It's just a matter of time till the 20th Amendment will be passed. We urge all parliamentarians from both the ruling and the opposition to refrain from supporting the lifting of the dual citizenship barrier. Use your vote against it to defeat this conspiracy.
කටයුතු කරන හැටියට අපි තාම කරුණාවෙන් ඉල්ලා සිටිනවා.
අනාගත පරම්පරාව ගැන කුමන කතාවක්?
These developments will affect our future generations. I urge all parliamentarians to vote against the 20th Amendment or be absent on the day of voting.
මම කියන්නේ ඒ කියන්නේ මේ ඔය විමල්ලා වගේ කට්ටිය. මොකද ඔය කෑ ගහලා සිංහ වගේ කෑ ගහලා අන්තිමට මේ එළියට ආවෙන් පස්සේ බලු වෙන්න වෙයි වගේ එකක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ කියන්නේ දැන් කෑ ගැහුවේ හරි සිංහෝ ටිකක් වගේනේ.
Journalists queried former President Maithripala Sirisena about his stance on the 20th Amendment.
පාර්ලිමේන්තු විශේෂ දෙයක් ගැන ඔබතුමා ඒකට සහභාගී වෙන්නේ නැද්ද? ඔබතුමා ඡන්ද දාන්නේ නැද්ද අද පාර්ලිමේන්තුවට? මේ කොමිෂන් ඉල්ලීම කරලා පුළුවන් නේද ඔබතුමාට මේ ඡන්ද දාන්නේ නැද්ද සර් පාර්ලිමේන්තුවට?
Journalists were left unanswered in this manner by the former president when he came to testify before the Presidential Commission probing the April 21st attacks. However, no testimonials were heard from the former president at the commission today, as commission hearings were postponed to tomorrow. The additional Solicitor General requested the evidence recorded at the commission since its inception to be presented to the Attorney General in accordance with Article 26 of the commission. Because an extensive discussion should be held regarding that request, the commission decided to postpone its hearings until 10 a.m. tomorrow.
What should have happened? What we requested in the general election, what was promised to us during the presidential election, was a complete constitutional amendment. If a complete constitutional amendment was to be introduced in 6 months, they could have focused on a complete constitutional amendment instead of having an amendment for these 6 months. The focus should have been given on that. I wonder whether this will drag the country backwards instead of moving forward. We say no to the 19th and look towards the 18th. The 18th is the JR Constitution. It is an autocratic constitution. I think this is shameful towards our intelligence. We will not go for an argument with the government we formed at this moment. However, we say that this is wrong and it must be corrected. This does not suit us. It is not fair. It damages the human intelligence. This hinders the path of modern Sri Lanka. If they want it, this major camp can overpower the things we say. However, throughout history, we have seen what happens when these things are rejected.
දැන් මේ වන විට පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ 20 වෙනි ආණ්ඩුක්‍රම ව්‍යවස්ථා සංශෝධනය සම්බන්ධයෙන් කාරක සභා අවස්ථාව එහෙම නැත්නම් සංශෝධන ඉදිරිපත් කරන අවස්ථාව නිමාවට පත් වෙලා තිබෙන්නේ. තුන්වන වර කියවීමට අදාළ ඡන්ද විමසීමයි තවත් නොබෝ වේලාවකින් පැවැත්වීමට නියමිතව තිබෙන්නේ. පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ මේ සිදුවන කටයුතු වාර්තා කරන්නයි අපි සූදානම් වන්නේ. ඔබ දන්නවා අද විවාදයේ දෙවන දිනට අවසන් වීමෙන් අනතුරුව අධිකරණ අමාත්‍ය ආරි සබ්රි මහතා විසින් පාර්ලිමේන්තුවට පිළිතුරු කතාව ඉදිරිපත් කළා. 20 වෙනි ආණ්ඩුක්‍රම ව්‍යවස්ථා සංශෝධන කෙටුම්පතට අදාළව එම පිළිතුරු කතාවෙන් පස්සේ දෙවන වර කියවීමේ ඡන්ද විමසීම පැවැත්වුණා. එහිදී මන්ත්‍රීවරුන් 156 දෙනෙකු පක්ෂව ඡන්දය ලබා දුන්නා. විපක්ෂය ඡන්දය ලබා දුන් මන්ත්‍රීවරුන් සංඛ්‍යාව 65ක් වුණා. කාරක සභා අවස්ථාවේදී විශේෂයෙන් පහුගිය කාල වකවානුව තුලම දැඩි කතාබහකට ලක්වුණු ද්විත්ව පුරවැසිභාවය සම්බන්ධයෙන් වූ වගන්තිය වැඩි ඡන්ද 157කින් සම්මත වුණා. ඡන්ද 157ක් පක්ෂව ලැබුණා. විපක්ෂව ලැබුණු ඡන්ද සංඛ්‍යාව 64ක්. ඒ අනුව එම වගන්තිය වැඩි ඡන්දයෙන් සම්මත වුණා. 157ක් පක්ෂව විපක්ෂව 64ක්. මේ අනුව 19 වන ආණ්ඩුක්‍රම ව්‍යවස්ථා සංශෝධනයෙන් පාර්ලිමේන්තු මන්ත්‍රීවරයෙක් ලෙස පත්වීමට තිබුණු වාදාවක් වුණු ද්විත්ව පුරවැසි භාවය ඉවත් වෙනවා. ඒ අනුව ද්විත්ව පුරවැසි භාවය සම්බන්ධ වූ වගන්තියට ඉවත් වීමට අදාළව තමයි මෙලෙස මන්ත්‍රීවරුන් 157 දෙනෙකු පක්ෂව ඡන්දය භාවිත කළේ. දැන් තුන්වන වර කියවීමට අදාළ ඡන්ද විමසීමයි පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේදී පැවැත්වීමට නියමිතව තිබෙන්නේ. ஜெஃப்ரி.
வசந்த விசேட செய்தியூடாக உங்களை சந்திக்கிறோம். 20வது அரசியலமைப்பு திருத்தத்தினுடைய குழுநிலை விவாதம் தற்போது நிறைவடைந்து 3ஆம் வாசிப்பு மீதான விவாதத்தினுடைய வாக்கெடுப்பு இடம்பெறுவதற்கான அனைத்து ஏற்பாடுகளும் தற்போது பாராளுமன்றத்தில் தயார் நிலையில் இருந்து கொண்டிருக்கிறது. ஏற்கனவே 2ஆம் வாசிப்பு மீதான வாக்கெடுப்பில் ஆதரவாக 156 வாக்குகளும் எதிராக 65 வாக்குகளும் கிடைத்தன. அதன் மூலமாக 91 மேலதிக வாக்குகளால் நிறைவேற்றப்பட்டிருந்தது. அதற்கு பிறகு அனைவராலும் கதைக்கப்பட்ட பேசப்பட்ட விடயமான 20வது அரசியல் அமைப்பில் காணப்படும் இரட்டை பிரஜா உரிமை கூட அதற்கான அந்த சரத்திற்கான வாக்கெடுப்பில் ஆதரவாக 157 வாக்குகளும் எதிராக 64 வாக்குகளும் கிடைத்திருந்தன. எனவே 92 மேலதிக வாக்குகளால் அந்த சரத்து நிறைவேற்றப்பட்டமை குறிப்பிடத்தக்கது. எனவே தற்போது இந்த குழுநிலை விவாதம் இடம்பெற்று 3ஆம் வாசிப்பு மீதான விவாதத்திற்கான வாக்கெடுப்பு இடம்பெற இருக்கிறது. இறுதி வாக்கெடுப்பாக இது அமைய போகிறது.
සාවෙන්න පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ තුන්වන වර කියවීමට අදාළ ඡන්ද විමසීම ආරම්භ වී තිබෙනවා. අපි යොමු වෙනවා පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ සජීව දර්ශන වෙත.
කාට හරි ඡන්දය දෙන්න බැරි වුණාද?
පක්ෂයි.
අලි සබ්‍රේ මන්ත්‍රීතුමා ඇමතුමා
පක්ෂයි. yes.
රාධාක්‍රිෂ්ණ මන්ත්‍රීතුමා no. සම්බන්ධන් ඉල්ලයි. توفق لي لي فالين mantutumaa hari
පක්ෂයි.
තවත් කවුරු හරි ඡන්දය පාවිච්චි කරන්න බැරුණු කෙනෙක් ඉන්නවද? යාරත් නිරත් මන්තුමා
අක්ෂයි.
අක්ෂයි හරි.
We're looking at the voting taking place for the 20th Amendment to the Constitution. As we already know, the second reading vote took place earlier on in the evening, where the 20th Amendment received 156 votes in favour and 65 votes against. 8 opposition MPs voted in favour of the 20th Amendment second reading. Now this is the vote on the 20th Amendment after the committee stage amendments are carried out. During the committee stage, there was another vote taken for the particular clause pertaining to the barriers on dual citizens entering Parliament, and that vote received 157 votes in favour and 64 against. One vote had moved from the opposition to the ruling faction.
පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ දැන් පැවැත්වෙමින් තිබෙන්නේ 20 වෙනි ආණ්ඩු ක්‍රම ව්‍යවස්ථා සංශෝධන කෙටුම්පතට අදාළ තුන්වන වර ඡන්ද විමසීම විද්‍යුත් ක්‍රමවේදය යටතේ මන්ත්‍රීවරුන් මේ වන විට තමන්ගේ ඡන්දය ප්‍රකාශ කරමින් සිටින ආකාරය අපිට දකින්න පුළුවන්කම තිබෙනවා. 20 වෙනි ආණ්ඩු ක්‍රම ව්‍යවස්ථා සංශෝධන කෙටුම්පත දෙවන වර කියවමින් අධිකරණ අමාත්‍ය අලි සබ්රි මහතා විසින් ඊයේ දවසේදී පාර්ලිමේන්තුවට එය ඉදිරිපත් කරනු ලැබුවා. ඉන් අනතුරුව විපක්ෂයේ වෙනුවෙන් ප්‍රධාන කතිකයා ලෙස පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේදී අදහස් දැක්වීම සිදු කළේ ඉම්තියාස් බාකීර් මහතා. ඉන් අනතුරුව ඊයේ දවසේදී අදත් කතිකයන් විශාල ප්‍රමාණයක් පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේදී මේ 20 වෙනි ආණ්ඩු ක්‍රම ව්‍යවස්ථා සංශෝධනය සම්බන්ධයෙන් පක්ෂව සහ විපක්ෂව අදහස් පළ කිරීමෙන් අනතුරුව දෙවන වර කියවීමේ අවස්ථාවේ පිළිතුරු කතාව කරනු ලැබුවා අධිකරණ අමාත්‍ය අලි සබ්රි මහතා විසින්. ඉන් අනතුරුව පැවති දෙවන වර කියවීමේ ඡන්ද විමසීමේදී 156ක 3/2ක බහුතර ඡන්දය මෙම පනත් කෙටුම්පතට ලැබුණා පක්ෂව. ඒ වගේම විපක්ෂව ලැබුණු ඡන්ද සංඛ්‍යාව 65ක් වුණා. ඉන් අනතුරුව කාරක සභා අවස්ථාව පැවැත්වුණේ. කාරක සභා අවස්ථාව මෙම පනත් කෙටුම්පතට සංශෝධන ඉදිරිපත් කරන අවස්ථාව ආණ්ඩුව සහ විපක්ෂයේ විසින් එහිදී ද්විත්ව පුරවැසිභාවයේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් වන වගන්තිය වෙනස් කිරීමට එහෙම නැත්නම් 19 වන ආණ්ඩු ක්‍රම ව්‍යවස්ථා සංශෝධනයේ පැවැතුණු පාර්ලිමේන්තු මන්ත්‍රීවරයෙකු වීමට නුසුසුකමක් ලෙස සැලකුණු ද්විත්ව පුරවැසිභාවය සම්බන්ධයෙන් වගන්තිය ඉවත් කිරීමට අදාළව විපක්ෂයේ විසින් ඡන්ද විමසීමක් ඉල්ලා සිටියා.
පක්ෂව ඡන්ද 156යි විරුද්ධව ඡන්ද 65යි. ඒ අනුව 20 වන ආණ්ඩු ක්‍රම ව්‍යවස්ථා සංශෝධනයේ නැමැති පනත් කෙටුම්පත තුන්වෙනි වර කියවා සංශෝධන සහිතව සම්මත කරගත් බව දන්වනු කැමැත්තෙමි.
කරු කතානායකතුමනි 23 වෙනි දින හෙට දිනේ පෙරවරු 10 දක්වා පාර්ලිමේන්තු කල්දිවිද්‍යයි යෝජනා කරනවා.
හෙට උදේ 10ට පාර්ලිමේන්තුව කල් තබනවා.
පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ දෙවන වර කියවීමේ ඡන්ද විමසීමෙන් අනතුරුව දැන් තුන්වන වර ඡන්ද විමසීමත් අවසන් වෙනවා. 20 වෙනි ආණ්ඩු ක්‍රම ව්‍යවස්ථා සංශෝධනය 3/2ක බහුතර ඡන්දයෙන් සංශෝධන සහිතව පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේදී සම්මත වෙනවා. තුන්වන වර කියවීමේදී පක්ෂව ලැබුණු ඡන්ද සංඛ්‍යාව 156ක්, විපක්ෂව ලැබුණු ඡන්ද සංඛ්‍යාව 65ක්. පක්ෂව ලැබුණු ඡන්ද සංඛ්‍යාව 156ක්, විපක්ෂව ලැබුණු ඡන්ද සංඛ්‍යාව 65ක්. දෙවන වර කියවීමේදී ලැබුණු ඡන්ද සංඛ්‍යාව හා සමානයි. දෙවන වර කියවීමේදීත් ලැබුණු ඡන්ද සංඛ්‍යාව පක්ෂව 156යි, විපක්ෂව 65යි. තුන්වන වර කියවීමේදීත් මේට පක්ෂව ඡන්ද 156ක් ලැබුණා, විපක්ෂව ලැබුණු ඡන්ද සංඛ්‍යාව 65ක් වුණා. මේ අනුව කතානායක මහින්දයාපා අබේවර්ධන මහතා විසින් නිවේදනය කළේ 20 වෙනි ආණ්ඩු ක්‍රම ව්‍යවස්ථා සංශෝධන පනත් කෙටුම්පත සංශෝධන සහිතව 3/2ක බහුතර ඡන්දයකින් පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේදී සම්මත වූ බව.
ஸ்துதி வசந்த விசேட செய்தியை இப்பொழுது நீங்கள் பார்த்து கொண்டிருக்கிறீர்கள். அரசியல் அமைப்பின் 20வது திருத்தம் 3/2 பெரும்பான்மையுடன் திருத்தங்களுடன் நிறைவேற்றப்பட்டிருக்கிறது. மூன்றாம் விவாதம் தொடர்பான வாக்கெடுப்பு சற்று முன்னர் இடம்பெற்றது. இதில் ஆதரவாக 156 வாக்குகளும் எதிராக 65 வாக்குகளும் கிடைத்தன. எனவே மேலதிக 91 வாக்குகளால் திருத்தங்களுடன் அரசியலமைப்பின் 20வது திருத்தம் நிறைவேற்றப்பட்டிருக்கிறது. சபாநாயகரால் உத்தியோகபூர்வமாக அறிவிக்கப்பட்டிருக்கிறது. எனவே நாளை காலை 10 மணி வரை பார்லிமென்றம் ஒத்திவைக்கப்பட்டுள்ளது. சத்து, over to you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. The 20th Amendment to the Constitution was passed in Parliament with amendments with the 2/3 majority. 156 votes were cast in favour of it, while 65 votes were cast against it. Thereby, Speaker Mahinda Abeyewardena noted and said in Parliament that the 20th Amendment to the Constitution is passed with amendments. Parliament was adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow. Well, after that, with the news with the Parliament, we move on to keep you updated about the quarantine curfews imposed around Colombo especially and in the Gampaha district. as well as the COVID situation. Quarantine curfew was imposed for the Kotahena police area with effect from 6 p.m. today. Army Commander Lieutenant General Shavendra Silva, who is also the head of the National Operations Centre for Prevention of COVID-19 outbreaks, said the decision was reached after the spike in the number of COVID-19 cases. Quarantine curfew was also imposed in the Mattakulliya, Mutwal, Vallampitiya, Blumendal and Grand Pass police jurisdictions this morning.
We decided to impose quarantine curfew in the entire Gampaha district immediately, as most of the COVID-19 cases identified within the fish market in Paliyugoda were residents of Gampaha. Following the reports we received this morning and considering the nature of this virus transmission, we decided to impose quarantine curfew in 5 police divisions. We have also decided to impose curfew coming into effect from 6 p.m. today in the Kotahena police division.
The situation at the Paliyugoda fish market.
After conducting PCR tests, a group at the Paliyugoda fish market were directed to quarantine last evening with the intervention of the army. Accordingly, 863 individuals have been directed to quarantine centres in Diyathalawa, Kundasale, Mulathip, Batiklo, Pale and Periyakadu.
Wholesale trading at the market commences at around 2 in the morning and ends at 7 or 8 in the morning. Only about 5% of the total crowd remains. It was this 5% that was affected. Identifying a high number of COVID-19 cases during such a short time frame within such a small area is a concerning development. This is why we imposed travel restrictions so we could identify their associates faster.
The Paliyugoda fish market remains closed indefinitely.
Now, with curfew being imposed in certain areas in the Colombo district and the Gampaha district, there are concerns of whether there will be an island-wide curfew today or tomorrow. We queried the army commander in this regard. This is what he had to say.
We do not hope to impose island-wide curfew. We will impose curfew or declare an area as isolated after comprehensively analyzing the situation there. Many who are unnecessarily frightened have started to purchase food items and essential items in bulk. This will only lead to unnecessary crowding and increase the risk of COVID-19 spreading. We have already imposed quarantine curfew in areas that have been identified as high-risk zones. As of now, we have not decided on imposing curfew in any other areas during the weekend.
The Colombo Manning Market.
The Colombo Manning Market was also closed down at 10 a.m. this morning after time granted to sell the remaining vegetables was over. The market will be open at 5 a.m. on Monday. According to the police, this decision has been taken to curb the spread of COVID-19. Meanwhile, 400 PCR tests were carried out in Gunasinghapura Peta to detect new cases.